Hi guys, so this is the third session of the week. You hopefully had spent a little bit of time working on Ozymandias in London, writing about them in summary format, thinking about the big themes and ideas. Today we're going to focus on actually writing about lines from the poem. So again, we're going to write about them individually. We'll come to comparison next week. Okay, so you finished last session with this. So I set you this question: how does Shelley present ideas about power in Ozymandias? And all I wanted was a GST introduction. So a general sentence about the poem, a more specific sentence about the poem, and then a thesis statement in which you say something about power and why Shelley wrote the poem. So I thought we'd start with that because I've done the task as well, and I'd just like you to compare your answer, your paragraph that you wrote with mine, to see if you've included similar details and if there's anything you think that you could improve of yours from mine. So I'll just read you. I've written: in Ozymandias, Shelley presents a description of the crumbling and largely destroyed statue of the once great Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses II. That's my general sentence. It's clearly very general, but I think very concise. It tells exactly what the poem's about. Ozymandias is presented as a hubristic character who saw himself as godlike, but this sense of self-importance is undermined by the fact so little is left of the statue. So again, I haven't really gone into any great depth about how it's been destroyed by time and time is more powerful than humans, because all of that I can develop in the essay, but I have been more specific. Rather than just a general overview, I've said something more specific about Ozymandias, his hubris, and the fact that that hubris is shown to be flawed. And then lastly, Ozymandias is a political poem that not only criticises the hubris of the English monarchy, who perceived themselves as superior to the people rather than servants of the people, but also reminds everyone of the ultimate transience of human power. So again, that's my thesis statement. So hopefully you can see how my third sentence is different to the other two, because rather than kind of explaining how ideas are presented or what's presented in the poem, I'm trying to get more into the why territory of why Shelley wrote it as a kind of political attack on the English monarchy and to undermine ideas of what power is and what it should be used for. Again, I haven't said everything, but everything I've said in here is the foundation for an essay. So if I was to go on to write the essay, these are the things I'd pick up on. I'd pick up on this idea of his hubris. I'd pick up on the fact that time ultimately has more power. I'd pick up on this idea of the transience of human power. So I've just chucked in some nice big things in there that I could develop and run with later in an essay, linking to textual evidence to explore in more depth. So do you want to just pause the video, compare mine with yours, see if there's anything you want to redo to yours, and then pick this up again. Okay, so what I'd like to do today is just a little bit of practice on writing about lines from the poems. So we did this a lot in earlier lessons in this little lockdown period, but you've probably forgotten a thing or two, and it's always good practice. So I'm just going to pick any line at all from London, and I'm just going to write an analysis of it and try and explain the line and why it's important. I then want you to pick any line, which can come from London or Ozymandias. Don't pick the same line I've already picked because that would be pointless. But pick any other line from Ozymandias or London, and using the process I'm about to model, write a paragraph about said line. And this is the structure. So I have chosen the line from London: every blackening church appalls. I like that line, there's lots to say about it, so I'm going to go with that one. And I'm going to use the what, how, why structure to build my paragraph. So this is exactly the way we've done it before. I'm going to say what I can infer from the whole line. Infer means what I can work out. I'm going to then say how Blake has used one particular word to create meaning. And then I'm going to do the main bit, which is the why bit. Why did he include this line? How does it relate to his broader intentions as a poet and a writer? Okay, so what, how, why. Okay, so here's my line, and obviously I need to get started by not just whacking the line there, I need to integrate it into a sentence nicely. Now, I think it's the easiest way to introduce a line is just to say where in the poem it comes. So it comes in the middle part of the poem, doesn't it? So I'll start with, in the middle, I think it's the third stanza actually, so I'll say in the third stanza. So I've established where this line comes from. And what Blake does at this point is he zooms in. So the poem, up until this point in the poem London, he has been describing an overview of the sights and sounds. But in the third stanza, he zooms in on a particular character, the chimney sweeper, and he zooms in on the church. So in the third stanza, Blake zooms in to focus on the specific character of the chimney sweeper and includes okay, so in the third stanza, Blake zooms in to focus on the specific character of the chimney sweeper and, let's not say includes, and attacks the church when stating, let's get our line in, every blackening church appalls. Okay, I haven't done the best job of integrating my... I don't think I've done the best job of integrating my quotation naturally into my sentence. I don't really like the when stating, so I will come back to that, but I'm going to keep going for now. So in the third stanza, Blake zooms in to focus on the specific character of the chimney sweeper and attacks the church when stating every blackening church appalls, which leads the reader to infer. Now there's two things I infer from this. Not only I infer firstly that it's dirty, that it's physically dirtied by the pollution and soot in the air, but also obviously I can infer that Blake is making a point about the moral corruption of the church. So I'm going to say both. So I'm going to use a not only but also sentence because that allows me to say both things in a really fluent way. So which leads the reader to infer that the church is not only physically dirty due to the soot and pollution, but also morally dirty as it is ignoring the exploitation of children forced into child labour. Okay, so my inference is quite deep because it's quite a big quote, isn't it? But my inference is that the church is physically dirty, but it's also morally dirty as it's ignoring the exploitation. So now I've done my what bit. I've got my quote in there and I've said what I can infer from it. So now I need to do the how bit, and my how is saying how one particular word creates meaning. So obviously I'm going to go with blackening. So I'm going to say in particular, because that's the way I always zoom in, Blake's use of the word blackening conveys, so we can say the word blackening conveys a sense of darkness and hopelessness. Religion should be a source of hope for people. A religion should be a source of hope for people. So religion should be a source of hope for people, but the word blackening, I'll reread this in a sec, suggests the filthy corruption which means it is failing in its failing to protect the vulnerable. Okay, let's have a look at this. Okay, so in the third stanza, Blake zooms in to focus on the specific character of the chimney sweeper and attacks the church when stating every blackening church appalls, which leads the reader to infer that the church is not only physically dirty due to the soot and pollution, but also morally dirty, as it is ignoring the exploitation of children forced into child labour. In particular, Blake's use of the word blackening conveys a sense of darkness and hopelessness. Religion should be a source of hope for people, but blackening suggests that filthy corruption, which suggests that filthy corruption is leading it, is causing it, should we say, is causing it to fail to protect the vulnerable. Shall we say? Okay, let's read that again. Convey a sense of darkness. Religion should be a source of hope for people, but blackening suggests that I don't. Okay, I'm going to change that to is suggestive of, because I just don't like the wording. The blackening is suggestive of the filthy corruption causing it to fail to protect one another. Okay, so religion should be a source of hope for people, but blackening is suggestive of the filthy corruption causing it to fail to protect the vulnerable. I like that better. And actually, this is why I model them live rather than write them and then just read them to you, because even someone who's taught this poem a lot and written about it a lot, I need to think quite hard about how I want it to sound, and rereading what you've written and really thinking about getting the expression right is really important. Okay, so my last sentence then is my why sentence, how it relates to Blake's wider intentions as an author. So that's a little bit, so I can finish by saying Blake saw organised religion as a method of control and oppression. Just consult my notes again. Used to hold back the poor and the vulnerable. Used to hold back the poor and vulnerable. Okay, so that third sentence will be easier. So now I've got my 3 sentences building up my what can I infer, how is one word used particularly to create meaning, and why did Blake use this line in relation to his wider intentions. In the third stanza, Blake zooms in to focus on the specific character of the chimney sweeper and attacks the church when stating, every blackening church falls, which leads the reader to infer, I think I changed that to leading the reader to infer, because I think it sounds a bit awkward there, doesn't it? Leading the reader to infer that the church is not only physically dirty due to certain pollution, but also morally dirty as it is ignoring the exploitation of children forced into child labour. In particular, Blake's use of the word blackening conveys a sense of darkness and hopelessness. Religion should be a source of hope for people, but blackening is suggestive of the filthy corruption causing it to fail to protect the vulnerable. Blake saw organised religion as a method of control and oppression used to hold back the poor and the vulnerable. Great, I'm happy with that now. So I've given my what, I've said more specifically how, and then I've said why Blake included that line. He wasn't a fan of organised religion. He didn't reject religion, he didn't reject God, but the church as the institution created on earth to do God's work, that's what he was angry at, because it wasn't doing its job. And so we see through this line that sense that the church is failing to do the good, it's failing to do God's work, because it's not, it's oppressing rather than helping the poor. Okay, so as I said, guys, pick any line at all from London or Ozymandias. Use mine as a model to help you. You can use, in the first stanza, third stanza. If you're writing about Ozymandias, he doesn't use stanzas, so you'd have to say line in the 6th line or something. And then just introduce your line, say something about it, build up detail, send your paragraph to your teacher to have a little look at and give you some feedback. And that's the end of another week. Well done, everybody.